Hello, good morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, awaken the consciousness. Benny.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello. I don't know. Yeah, just trying to spice it up a little bit. It's
Oh, you don't have to work very hard at that, Loretta. Come on. I mean, just seriously.
I got to tell you, this is funny. Years ago, I was working with a healer, and I know, I was very, very shy as a girl, very sensitive, one of those highly sensitive people, right? And I said something to her about how I always was trying to hide and be invisible, and she just looked at me with this expression, and she said, "Oh, honey, you're not invisible.
You're far from it."
And I was like, "Oh, well, that didn't work."
That's cute. It's adorable.
So there you have it, everybody. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day. And up here in Seattle, we're kind of foggy and smoggy and smoky and rainy. And welcome to October. That's what the thing is, right?
Sure, we'll go with
Betty,
that.
Betty, you're still laughing.
You just labeled like everything you could just come up with. I think you just take your pick, but I'll stick with the majority of the fog for today, because it is
Okay.
October and it's getting a little more crisp around here in the Pacific Northwest. A little frost on the pumpkins soon, very soon.
Although I got to tell you, I went shopping for Halloween candy and there's Christmas decorations. I'm not going to say anything.
It's been up since like last July.
They never took it down.
No, it's up all year round. They just can't move to the consistency of the next holiday. It's like 5 ahead.
Yeah. I do love fall here. I've got big maple trees outside and they're starting to change color. And of course, I have this thing about trees. So, anyway, it's just beautiful. I hope everybody's having a good time. And man, I've got a great show for you today. Wonderful, wonderful. I got a guy named Tim Walter. I'm going to bring him on in just a few minutes. You are going to just love this subject. So, before I get to that, I am Loretta Brown. I'm the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area for the last 28 years. And you can find me at ReikiOasis.com. Thank you to my patrons. We are a listener-supported show. And from my heart to yours, always special, special, special blessings, because everything that you do contribute your energy, contribute your love, contribute in any way that you can. It helps us all connect and helps me bring great people onto the show. So I do thank you. A little bit of an astrological check-in. Welcome to October, and it is a month of tumultuous transitions. So hang on. We began the month with 6 major planets retrograde: Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all having a retro party. I don't know what they're dressed up as, but they were doing it.
Planet party. Gotta love planet party.
Planet party. I know, exactly. And thank goodness Mercury, thank you, Mercury, went direct on the 2nd. And as we journey through the month, Pluto and Saturn will also station direct, minimizing that backward energy. And they're going to kickstart. This is a powerful kickstart this month, a new cycle of planetary and personal transformation. With Mercury moving direct, new insights and intuition may come into play. Pluto moves direct on Saturday, October 8th. Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, very active right now. And so it emerges from this chapter we've been going through. We may be able to see with greater clarity all the ways we have transformed. And if we've experienced any endings during this time, we may begin to see how those endings are guiding us into a new direction, which is where we absolutely have to go. Sunday, October 9th, we have the volatile Aries full moon, which will launch us into a healing of some kind, and has some of us already saying in beautiful Aries fashion, stomping their foot, enough with this healing, let's get on with it, come on, let's go. So be careful with this energy. It can be angry, it can be volatile, can be uncomfortable. Stay grounded, connect with all that is, bring yourself back to center. So just be aware, it's an awful lot of fire in the sky. The confronting Aries full moon will launch us into a very intense eclipse season. And all the astrologers are talking about this. This is really big energy. And I don't tell you that to say, oh, be afraid. I'm just letting you know the weather, right? So when we know what's coming, you can just get prepared. So we have a Scorpio new moon solar eclipse on October 25th and a Taurus blood moon eclipse on November 8th, which is election day here in the States. You will be feeling the effects of these two powerful eclipses throughout the entire month of October. And we have another major cosmic event happening at the end of October, on October 30th. In between those eclipses, Mars goes retrograde in Gemini. Oh, Mars, planet of action, energy, and motivation, and Gemini is about thinking. When these two things come together, there's a challenge. It's going to challenge our energy levels. It's going to challenge our motivations. We may feel two-minded. We may be feeling at odds with some of the things that the beautiful full moon on Sunday will begin to illuminate for us. So remember, I do mean this. Remember to be kind. Keep breathing. And then I want you to listen to my guest today, because you know what? He works an awful lot with energies of many different kinds. He might have some insight into what I just said. Who knows? I put him on the spot, right? So my guest today is Tim Walter. I feel like I need like applause or something. So glad to have you on my show. He is an alternative life coach, a house healer, and author of absolutely spectacular book called Spirit and Earth, a handbook for modern holistic living. For 30 years, starting in 1983, Tim Walter worked as a successful corporate video writer, director, and producer. However, in the early 2000s, his interest in the stressful, deadline-driven corporate world had started to wane because his life had radically changed perspective. His family moved to a new house in 1998 and discovered that where they now lived contained a ghost. Yes, a ghost, which the family learned to speak with through dowsing. I've got your attention, don't I? Yes, indeed, mine too. This personality introduced Tim to the concept of earth energy, which eventually led him to establish a network of international house healers and into his current work. Wow, Tim, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
What
a lovely thing to be part of.
Could we just douse right now? Could you just douse the world?
I would rather not on so many levels, if you don't mind. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things involved in that, but yeah. Where do you want it?
Yeah, yeah, that's political right away, isn't it? Let's not go there. So, could you please? Thanks. Could you please just give the audience a little bit of your backstory and fill us in? Like, what? Right?
Yeah. It's it always sounds rather remarkable, actually. Every time I hear people doing the same intro, it's like, oh yeah, that guy. Oh well, that's me, right? It's. I mean, fundamentally, the story, everybody has their own story. Everybody's life is their own story, and everybody has a book to write and everything. And I mean that, absolutely in the way that all creative beings should exist. So, that's number one, is there is nothing special about me per se. I am simply an aspect of the universe in the same way as you rather wonderfully are too. Now, way back in 1998, I wouldn't have understood what on earth somebody would have meant by any of that. In 1998 is when we moved into the house in the Welsh borders, and really completely and utterly changed our lives by meeting this spirit of a deceased lady that was known as Jane. She basically said to us as a family, I just want to be part of the family. But actually, Jane was far more than just what we would recognize as an ordinary ghost. She was, I'll use the word is, she is a guardian aspect. She is a guardian aspect and a spirit of place, literally personified. Now, when she introduced herself to us as a family, she said, you know, there are some dragon lines here in the house that we've moved into, and I'm here looking after those so that they don't give you any trouble. And this idea that there would be these things called dragon lines, which we can talk a little bit more about in a minute,
Yes.
it seemed both incredibly radical, but also very, very natural and normal. I didn't know anything about ley lines, earth energy lines, energy grids, any of this sort of stuff at all at the time. Neither my wife nor I did. We were not open to the spiritual realms in that sense. We had a vague sort of interest in it, and I'd had one or two precognitive dreams when younger. But it was a completely different world. But yet it also came to us in a very, very familiar way, which was rather lovely. And the great thing about Jane was that the way that she introduced herself to us through very, very small and tiny things happening in the house, so that we would just start to think, oh, there's something going on here, but we don't know what it is. But it wasn't too terrifying, right? For somebody that was getting this sort of incursion into their life, it can sometimes be terrifying. I was seeing things out of my peripheral vision. I was seeing dark shapes. I was, you know, encountering these odd, what I thought were sort of very brief hallucinations, really. And I was putting them down to in my imagination, or was I going mad? That sort of question. And it was really only when somebody, a very ordinary fella actually, suggested that we get the house spiritually cleared, that we finally met Jane through that process of having a dowser actually come to the house. In fact, 3 ladies came to the house with their dowsing rods and introduced us to the lady, and that's where life started to change.
I'm fascinated by your story. You know, of course, Hollywood has overdone the poltergeist business,
Yeah.
right, in a very dark way. But I'm so curious about this. So you said that Jane is a guardian. What do you mean by that?
Well, once you start to access the subtle realms, you'll know this, but I'll explain for your listeners and the viewers.
Yep.
Once you start to access the subtle realms, then you are opening yourself to a form of reality and a layer of reality that will manifest in really the most appropriate way for you as a conduit of information exchange. That's a rather grand way of saying basically whatever works for you is going to work for you, doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. So when you go to a sacred site, let's take place as an example. We're talking about spirit of place. When you go to a sacred site such as Stonehenge, everybody knows Stonehenge. Let's move on from Stonehenge. There are places like Avebury-Henge over here in the UK. You've got masses of sacred sites in the States. Mm-hmm. You go to any of these places, there is actually a personality that can be accessed through dowsing, if that's the way that you choose to access them, at each of these locations. And their role in the structure of reality is to basically look after that realm and all of those people, animals, beings, informational bodies that wish to pass through that time and space. So their role of guardian is one of looking after that aspect that they vibrate with. Our roles really as human beings is to actually be guardians. We are supposedly guardians of our planet in the physical form, but look what we've detached from.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jane is merely a personification. I put that in brackets or whatever parentheses or whatever you want to say. Not merely anything. You know, she's a lovely, wonderful, amazing being. just like all of these guardian aspects are. And many of them have chosen to come back and be present for us as, beings to interact with and exchange information with, in the same way as they used to be present and very, very much to the forefront of mystical practice and spiritual practice, when we as a species were far more connected to the energies of Mother Earth as we are born to be, but we have ignored and forgotten and neglected.
Wow, I jotted down like 10 questions while you were talking. I really love this. So, when people talk about like nature spirits, or I sometimes say, the goddess of Seattle.
Yeah.
I mean, Starbucks has a goddess on there.
Sure.
Let's not forget that, right? But I really do mean it at some level. So are we talking, because we are entering into another realm here. I mean, we could say we're in the quantum field, but I'm really getting from you this, it's an interactive interface, for lack of knowing exactly what to call it. And then also talk more about, like, what is the difference between a quote unquote ghost, a guardian, a nature spirit, and the earth.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. I'm only laughing because, of course, it's such a massive question, but it's very fun, but it's very fundamental. So you mentioned the quantum word there. So I mean, I do very much look at I follow the sort of school of thinking of somebody like Dr. Amit Goswami, who basically says that the quantum field is in a field of infinite possibility, and therefore we interact with it, and our realities are the reflection back from our interaction with that infinite field of possibility. Now, having said that, the reason that I so warmly embrace Amit on that sort of level is because fundamentally that's what Jane was telling me when I first started to have conversations with Jane the Guardian. This is the sort of thing that she was trying to put across. So she dived straight in there with this kind of like big life, the universe, and everything sort of conversation. But partly because obviously I was asking the questions. I wanted to know about what's going on over there. How is it for you? Literally, what's life like for you there? Right. Okay, so to come back to your question, ghosts are what we would traditionally regard as something like the remnants, those are all the wrong words. They are like the residual energy of somebody that has lived and passed. And that presence is still there, and you can still communicate with them, and there it is, right? So sometimes a ghost will be lost because it hasn't passed over completely, the soul hasn't transitioned correctly, and therefore the role of the house healers that I work with and teach, the part of the role is to help that soul move on and to transition and to therefore rebalance the energy of the space. A spirit, you've got all sorts of spirits will have passed through and done their journey correctly, and they wish to come back and they wish to interact with us. And spirits needn't necessarily be nature spirits, but in your question, you asked about nature spirits, which is like, to us over here in the UK, we would call them the little people, fairies, and the whole range of elemental energies that are associated with nature, with plants, with trees. So you've got tree spirits and all of that. And those are basically what we would refer to as the Devic realms. So we've got angelic and Devic guardian aspects as part of all of that picture. Does that make sense? I feel as though I'm kind of throwing these words in there and it's not really kind of gelling. But I think you know what I mean, but I'm not sure that I'm being clear for your viewers. So we've got various roles of guardianship within all of that, which, fundamentally, when you said the spirit of Seattle, I mean, broadly speaking, that's correct, because you've just got a matter of scale. So each and every house has a guardian aspect to it, right? And then as you pull out, if you were looking at Google Earth, for example, and you pull out to a wider scale, so you might come out to a village, that will have a guardian aspect to the village. Come out to a town, that'll have a guardian aspect as well. These are all personalities that you can communicate with, especially if you're prone or open to or susceptible to that kind of mediumship sort of way of interacting with those subtle energies. It doesn't mean to say that everybody is going to be able to have a conversation with them, but you can try. And dowsing is the safest and the most immediately available way for anybody, no matter where they think they are on the sensitivity scales. So somebody like yourself, highly sensitive, born with it, you know, your way of seeing the world and interpreting the world will be very different to mine, for example, but as it would be to anybody else's. And really the power of all of this stuff, and the real kind of lesson for us all, if there is a lesson, if there need be a lesson, it is actually the absolute uniqueness of each of our individual universes in which we exist, you know?
Yes. I'm hearing you very deeply. I'm trying to figure out how to, I'm kind of like you, like, it's such a broad subject, but I want to kind of hone it in for the listening audience. So let me ask this question, and maybe this is a big one too. So our interaction, like you say somewhere along the line that we are the like the transmitter and the receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know how to ask this question. So my energy, or I don't know if it's my emotions, if it's my energy, if it's my being, you know, I don't really know what the right terminology is here. But let's say that I'm having a bad day. Let's say that I'm really angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how would that interact with I'll say my house, my environment, right? And what is the deal there? Am I affecting the environment? Is it affecting me?
Okay.
Are we working together? You understand the question. Thank you.
Yeah. And the answer is, the short answer is yes.
Yes.
But we'll enlarge upon that. Okay.
Yep.
What we've got in being the transmitter and the receiver. So when we say that is that we are receiving information from our seemingly external environment. We are processing through our state of being, our emotional state of being, whether that be angry, joyous, loving, fearful, any of these things, and then that is being combined and manifested out for us to perceive and witness, and then we in the next moment react to that in a constant loop. Okay, so our experience of reality, because that's fundamentally what it is, it's our experience of reality is an ongoing created process, moment by moment, building to minute by minute, in a constant state of renewal and replenishment. So it's not like the earth is, there you go, it's been there for 500,000 years, billion years, whatever, 500,000, a few billion years, and nothing changes. It is at the absolute fundamental level of the quantum foam of creation being recreated every moment, and we as a species are part of that process in transmitting and receiving and right, that loop. Okay, so we live in our own feedback loop effectively, right? Now, so I am living in mine, you're living in yours, but at the moment our two feedback loops are interacting, and that is partly because they're resonating at a similar frequency, and therefore we're exchanging enough information, we have enough commonality in our two universes to exchange that existence. But what we both are is facets of the universe of source energy that is asking the question of what's going on, what's the experience here, what is here to be learned, what does this particular aspect of packet of energy need to do in order to function effectively in a short, mid and long-term scenario. So in being angry, for one thing, what we're doing is accessing a whole range of lower vibrational energies in our picture that is being presented by what we interact with, right? So if we say that anger, let's go to anger and fear and all of the very low vibrations that can exist and a lot of people do really function with and thrive on. So we get into jealousy and hatred and envy, and nothing in the world is there to be grateful for. When you're in that kind of dark space, then fundamentally what you're experiencing is all of those vibrational echoes and resonances coming from that level. Now, this is why it's so important that, we talk about gratitude all the time, but it's very fundamental that once you can start to build on the gratitude and build the vibration of your existence to come from the heart in a loving sense, and therefore you're living from all of those lovely, wonderful, positive vibes of love, compassion. Those are echoed in sincerity and honesty and, generosity and flow. Then that world that you interact with and you co-create is a very, very different picture to one from the deep and dark and low energies creation. But the point is that we're doing this all the time, whether we know it or not. And that's the absolutely crucial thing. And so what we're really talking about doing is, and again, this is not new. None of this is new. This is very fundamental sort of ancient spiritual practice. But what is really important is that right now, it's our choices, our ability to choose to function from here, which is the heart energy, which is to function from compassion, rather than to sit in the lower energies, which is where we've been as a species in a detached way, as we talked about before, for so many hundreds of years. So, and this is why, your astrological forecast earlier on is actually incredibly relevant, because it's in our choices. We have the choice. We have the ability to make the choices, but we need to understand and to be mindful that we are making choices, and we choose, and we put our energy of intention and love into those choices, literally, when it's important that we do so, because that's what changes the world that you experience. So right now, what we've got is a lot of in the world is a lot of chaos. Huge amount of chaos. But every time we do a healing on a person, if we bring it down to scale of 1 to 1, what we see is a healing reaction, is a healing change. There, in the process of change, there can often be chaos. Now, what we're seeing globally is exactly that. We've had generations of light workers asking for change and working on the light and all the rest of it. And so why would we be surprised that actually we're going to go through a period of immense chaos and fear and darkness? This is a healing reaction. And the last few years has been very much a healing reaction, dealing with a lot of fear. There's more to come. But where we are now is sharing a planet that is absolutely waking up to the fact that it is a co-creative energy of source. The world is not what it seems. That's the fundamental takeaway.
Wow, that's beautifully said. Very, very in-depth information, and we're going to take a station break. I have so many wonderful questions for you. I got a feeling this hour is going to go by really fast. Anyway, my guest today is the amazing, I truly mean it, Tim Walter, and this is Loretta Brown. We're going to talk more about, believe it or not, ghosts and dowsing and house healing when we come back. You're going to want to hear it. So we'll be right back.
All right. All clear. Still live on the platforms there.
Yeah, we're live on YouTube. Wow, Tim, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I can't remember who it was I was interviewed who was talking about the beings that overlook countries, right? And I am that sensitive person, I believe in guides and angels and call them whatever you want, right? Forces out there that are helping and possibly hindering.
Yes.
Right. This idea that we're interacting with
the Marie Manual.
Man, I wish we could talk 3 hours on that concept. It's kind of big, isn't it?
I think it's huge because it is built on an entirely different foundation to the one that we believe reality is built from at the moment. And again, that's the point.
Yeah.
You've got wonderful channels like Paul Selig, who I really rate very highly.
Very highly, yeah.
Yeah. And the information that he brings through and the information that you'll come across yourself from your own guides is absolutely I'll say it again, the world is not what it seems. And the essence of that is that we have the ability to make it as malleable an experience as we wish it to be. And we have been kept in darkness for a long, long time. Whether or not you believe that to have been a process that has been manufactured or manipulated to keep the human species in the darkness, that, you see, is one of the questions that you have to answer for yourself. Each individual person has to answer that. And that is part of the healing process, the process of unwrapping one's own individual belief system and deciding, is this what I believe truly? Or is that what I've picked up from somebody else? Is that what I've picked up from my parents? Is that what I pick up from the media? I'll say the word. What do I truly believe? Because that's what functions and creates the reality in which we live. So right now we've got a whole host of conflicting possibilities of what the world is and why the world is as it is. But in our choices, then we are choosing which path to then follow.
And Tim, I hate to interrupt. I got to bring her back on here, so hang tight, okay?
Cool.
Woohoo! Welcome back to the original Loretta Brown Show with my guest, Tim Walter. And he is an alternative life coach and a dowser and a house healer and all kinds of wonderful things. I want to remind the listening audience, you can download these shows for free. You can find them on the KKNW 1150 archives for the original Loretta Brown Show. And of course, we're on iTunes, Podcast One, Spotify. We're really all over the place. So there's hundreds of shows, many, many wonderful people. So go back, and of course you can get this one and listen to it over and over again. Tim, I want to bring all of this down into a little bit more practicality for the listening audience. So could you please talk a little bit about, all of a sudden I'm like, which question do I want to ask? Talk a little bit about dowsing and the work that you actually do with houses, because I'm thinking while people are listening, some people are probably saying, gee, do I have a ghost in my house? And or why is there an area of my house or something going on? And I know I'm saying a lot here, and I know you'll jump in, but I actually have a client who a few years back I was working with who kept coming in talking about this area in her home that she just, when she goes into that area, it's not good. Okay. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite common. That you can find an area in a home that is just that one little area that somebody is like, oh no, really don't like that, or it's just a corner of a room. Sometimes it's like, oh no, I just want to put a chair in that corner. there are so many aspects to the subtle energies that do actually impinge on our subconscious, and if you're not kind of sensitive in the way that you are, then people will just kind of like, well, I don't really like that, but I don't know why I don't like that, or whatever. But the thing is that there's a geopathic stress is something that is a label, right, that is applied to aspects of a person's house that are creating detrimental influences on that person. So geopathic stress can be earth energy, ley lines, spirits, any of these sort of things. Technopathic stress even can, as far as I'm concerned, can come under the whole label of geopathic stress. Right. So the thing is that, if you talk to a real estate agent, then they'll talk about the buyer just instinctively knows when they walk into a new property whether it's the right house for them. What's going on there? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about, because it's an innate subconscious reaction to the energy of the house. So the wow factor when somebody walks into a new house is, and they say, well, this is the one for us, this is lovely, I can see us living here and raising a family. That is really due to the energy, the feeling of the place. Now, in the house healing that we do, we use a list of some 50 section headings. That's 50 section headings that we actually ask with dowsing. We ask the management upstairs, or we ask our guides about, is this facet, section 1, let's call it spirits, trapped souls, is this adversely affecting the occupant? And then you get a response, you get a yes or no response. And if you're mediumistically inclined, then you kind of have a conversation with your guide while you're doing that. So in that sense, then the dowsing becomes just a key to access your own intuitive abilities. So, but we go through 50 or so of these section headings, which, as I say, includes things like underground water flows, ley lines, earth energy lines, toxic lines, technopathic stress, all the electrical interference from things, psychic attacks, psychic cords, ancestor issues, karma, all of this sort of stuff. People can be subjected to all sorts of things. If we think about the house and the place, and like your example of a room that is not great, then most commonly it's underground water, earth energy, toxic lines, or another kind of energy flow as a line kind of manifested through. So earth energy lines, people will have heard of ley lines, and ley lines are usually straight alignments that can be plotted on a landscape. And the best thing with ley lines is to actually look at a map and then plot them on the map, and you can see where they flow, right? Earth energy lines are slightly different because they weave like a river across the landscape. And earth energy is the really, really important stuff, because earth energy is the mechanism that carries the information of us away to wherever it is processed at whatever depth of resonance, and therefore the reality created back to us, right? So earth energy is integral to that process that we've been talking about in the first half. But on a practical level, anybody can pick up a little an old coat hanger, bend it into an L rod, and literally ask a question. Just simply, very first question that I get people to ask: am I standing up? Right? You hold the L rod. Am I standing up? And it will say no. Right. Okay. Fine. So you're then dowsing. You are dowsing. Now you can do it with a pendulum. Douse with a pendulum, or a wedding ring on a bit of thread. So the basic interaction with dowsing is very straightforward, and the idea is that you ask a question and you get a yes or no response. But then when you get more practiced at it, that opens up and the individual develops a different way of interacting with it. But simply, people at home, if they have a room that they feel uncomfortable about, they can literally bend a coat hanger, go in there and ask, and it's very safe. Just simply ask the universe, is there an earth energy line in this room that I am out of sync with, for example? that sort of thing, and you get a response.
So if you are out of sync, what do you do? Right?
Put yourself back in. Put yourself back in sync. Fundamentally, when we're working on people's houses, because actually some people can get very out of sync to the
Yes.
extent that they can have physical manifestations from beings or creatures or things that shouldn't be there. So really what we're doing when we're doing the work is we're actually, once we've got all the information about what's going on, we sit in meditation in the healing energy balancing part of the work. We talk to upstairs and ask them to do the work that is required, because we don't know what is required. We don't have the bigger picture, and we're doing all of this work in alignment with divine will, and is rebalancing all of the energy levels in all stratas that affect all living beings, whether they're in our dimension or somebody or another one. So we can't access that kind of information. So we literally are doing it, that we are the point of awareness. We're the observing, we're the holding of the space. We are the thing that holds the space, all of those expressions. But they do the work. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you said something which actually goes back to my question, which is, if you are out of sync with that, right, and really out of sync, then you can begin to attract negative entities or negative energies or things like that into your space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you can not only attract negative entities, but you can be out of sync with the, even the natural world, the underground water flows, for example. And there was lots of research done in Germany decades ago about people that were sleeping over underground water lines that crossed, and instances of cancer. And there certainly seemed to be a correlation. And in Europe, the medical profession, some of them, actually treat these things with some degree of seriousness. So not here in the UK, I hasten to add. But yeah, I mean, the detrimental influence that you can be subject to can be either from personalities or from features.
In your house healing, right? Like, you've been doing this for a while now, right? And you train people how to do this. And your book, Spirit and Earth, has a lot of information in it for people. I highly recommend it, especially if you're trying to figure out how to work with your home or your environment. Do you ever run into, I mean, I heard you say that you help spirits move on. Do you ever run into like haunted places? A lot of people talk about, like they move into a place and then, the energy is really bad or whatever the deal it is. Can you talk to that, please?
Yeah, I mean, a haunted house, for example, I mean, that's a real thing. It's just, it's not a la Hollywood. I mean, I'll rephrase that. It isn't often a la Hollywood. Okay. Right? So if you've got a really nasty haunting going on, then yeah, it can be. If you've got a lot of poltergeist activity, and if somebody has gone in there and really stirred up whatever entity is living there, and it was already grumpy, and you've just gone in there, or somebody's just gone in there and made their day even worse, then they get really grumpy. So things happen. So yeah, I mean, haunted houses are real phenomena. Unfortunately, there are a lot of TV programs where you've got the guys kind of rattling into a place and then running around screaming because they're surprised by what they find, and some of it's made up, of course. But when you do the work that we do, we are always going into a space with the utmost respect. We acknowledge that we are going to encounter living beings that are on different dimensions within that space. And depending on what the conversation has been with the client to start with, we will have an idea of to what extent it's going to be personality driven. Okay, let's use the word entity driven interference or not. But the point is that every living being simply wishes to have some degree of respect. And we, as a species, are absolutely fantastic at completely ignoring any respect for ourselves, let alone anything else. So quite often, what is required is for an understanding, a conversation with that personality, with that entity, and in understanding what the issue is, why is it there? What is it associating its vibration with? Is it actually parasitic in terms of, is it taking something from the person? And therefore there's a symbiosis that's developed over a long time. And therefore can that relationship be broken, and for the both of those aspects to still exist and to complete their purposes? So there's a whole conversation to be had, but you do that from a place of understanding, of compassion, and of accepting that everything deserves respect.
So you have a training program.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
I can. It really is. It's the self-development program more than anything else, to be honest. It's I've been doing it for a few years because what happened was that I had a mentor, Hamish Miller, lovely guy, author of a book called The Sun and the Serpent, which was about the earth energy flows across the south of England. Now, Hamish, because he was a great dowser and a wonderful natural healer. I don't like the word healer, but let's use that for the time being.
Sure.
He found this existence as well, beyond the veil, and he would go into a space to work with somebody's house and clear it simply by opening that portal and asking the management in that respect, right? So I met Hamish and had learned about his process around about 2000. Well, I met him in 2003, 2002. He passed away in 2010. By the time he passed away, I wasn't doing it professionally, doing this house healing professionally, but I started getting interested in more of that aspect about, okay, so what is all this about? And I met Adrian Incledon-Webber, who is a dowser here in the UK. He was a leading light of the British Society of Dowsers for some years. Now, what Adrian had done was to put together a structure, a framework, which had these 50 or so section headings. Now, Adrian's become a good buddy of mine. What was obvious was that what Hamish had been doing and what Adrian was doing were very, very comparable and compatible. And where I take facets from both of these guys, I relate it to the individual house healer, and that's what I work with. That's what I teach. If you were to do it, for example, I would be talking to you about your individual, unique amazingness and how you express that in working with the clients that you then meet, and how you work and develop that relationship to upstairs in order to achieve the change that you want to achieve for those clients. So what I'm talking about is that special, wonderful uniqueness that we all have. If that answer I'm not sure if that gets close to answering your question.
Yeah, because your training program is called the Knight's Rose House Healing Training Course.
Yeah,
and it is a spiritual development course. I mean, it's a development course along with it, and I think the point of a lot of my questions today was to help bring into focus for the listening audience the entire realm that you step into when you begin this concept of dowsing and house healing. What is a typical house healing visit like? Like, what if someone wanted you to work with them? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really a typical one, Loretta.
Thank you.
as you might sort of expect.
Right.
It can be a whole range of things. It can be from, I've had. I really should be more prepared because everybody asks this, and I always forget who my clients have been. Obviously, we've got client confidentiality, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But we have things like, I did some work a little while ago for a couple who were feeling very, very affected by their Wi-Fi system and the electronics. As it turned out, the issue actually was fear from a deeper level, and actually the manifesting, the symptom, the symbols rather, of the electrical stuff was purely the symbolism. And so once we dealt with the fear at a very fundamental level, they were fine. They were no longer reacting to the electronics. So that's one thing. I've just done some work. Well, I'm working now with a guy who has a touch of schizophrenia, certainly has bipolar, and we're helping to bring his true character back to the fore. Now, but what we have to bear in mind is that there are, layers to this. Some of them are mental, and if you talk to a psychologist and a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, then they will absolutely be working on that mental level. The spiritual level can affect the mental level as well, but there's a kind of a combination that needs to be done quite often. We don't neglect and we don't dismiss mainstream medical practice. So if somebody has a history of bipolar and they are being treated by their medical practitioner, then that's great if they're happy with that. If they want to look into whether the spiritual healing is going to help them, then yeah, we work with that and we see how that goes. We don't guarantee any kind of results because we never know what's going to happen.
Right.
But so schizophrenia, a little bit of schizophrenia, bipolar, yes, definitely we've had some success with that. We've had families where, bless them, daughters have had anorexia. They, that can be a spiritual energy process. Very dark stuff, actually. Sometimes it's simply children, youngsters, toddlers, or children of any age not sleeping, or adults not sleeping. Frequently, though, with adults not sleeping, it's not actually due to the spiritual kind of energy stuff. It's just, come on, what are you doing? Let's just get your habits sorted out here properly. Yeah. Look after yourself. Right. But with kids, it can be very, very, big reactions to going from being terrified of being in their room and not sleeping to just being completely out for the count once the clearing's been done. Because we do get instances where it's, the classic case of, the child says, "Mummy or Daddy, there's somebody in my room. And why are they in my room? They're there every night and I don't like them. Why do they sit there at the end of the bed?" This sort of thing. Right. So, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts, Loretta, really. I mean, I'm on this subject. Like, I really love this subject. So we barely scratched the surface. I mean, we're down to like the last couple of minutes of the show, right? Talk for just very quickly, your book, Spirit and Earth, and where can people find you? And I know you have a YouTube channel, and very quickly, Spirit and Earth. Actually, that was written really fundamentally so that we could illustrate just how simple it is to connect to these amazing beings and to the power that is there and to the power that is within us. And that's the reason I co-wrote that with Adrian Incledon-Webber, who I mentioned earlier on. So that's the book. You can get it from Amazon. I know a lot of people don't like Amazon, but there we go. It's a really good outlet, so it's helpful. Yeah. You can find me on the YouTube channel. Simply go to YouTube and Google Tim Walter Dowser or Tim Walter House Healer. If you don't put the House Healer or the Dowser in, you'll get some German football manager. That is clearly not me. And don't go asking him about house healing, because you probably won't get a very nice response. So Tim Walter House Healer or Dowser, or www.knightsrose.com. knightsrose.com. So that's KNIGHTSROSE.com. Yeah, that's the place to find me.
I love it. All right. So everybody, Tim Walter, Spirit and Earth, Dowsing, house healing, ghosts, energies. What a wonderful show. 3 last words. What would you like to say to the audience?
3 last words. That's the sort of question that I used to ask as a video producer. So in 3 words, just capture the. I just keep coming back to the words "God bless you," because actually, it is about the higher realms.
Yes,
and we are supported 100% of the time.
Absolutely. To the listening audience, have a great week. Be careful. It is going to be a full moon in Aries. Oh boy, time for a party. Anyway, lots of love, everybody. Thank you so much. And home sweet home, Benny says. Aw, I love it.